Welcome to Talk Learning with me. I'm Joseph Diaz, an instructional designer passionate about connecting with others and exploring the field of learning and development. In this episode, I'm joined by Garrett Egan, a senior learning experience designer with a background in tech, gaming, and instructional design. Garrett brings a rich perspective on what it really means to apply game-based principles in learning, beyond just badges and leaderboards. We explain why gamification often misses the mark, how to truly engage learners like game designers do, and what L&D can borrow from immersive storytelling and design thinking to create learning experiences people actually want to finish. On that note, let's talk gamification, learning, and the real power behind great game design. All right, Garrett, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to jump into things, reconnect with you. It's been a little while since we initially talked, and we were talking a little bit before I hit record about this, but I just have to give you a huge shout out for being such a great resource to me when I was in my master's program, giving me the inside scoop of what can you expect getting into the workplace and skills to work on. Some of the advice that you gave me was super, super insightful. So before we get into things, just wanted to give you that shout out and a huge thank you for all the help you gave me.
Anytime. Happy to help.
Awesome. Well, before we get into our conversation, I would love, Garrett, for you to give maybe a little bit of an introduction about yourself, just for our listeners to get to know you a little bit.
Sure. I'm Garrett. I originally started with the dream of being a performer. I was going to be a singer or an actor or something, and then decided away from that and moved into computer science, which is as big of a shift as you can make, probably. Because I wanted to build creative things. That's really it. And so I worked in the tech and gaming industry for a little while, went back to school to get a master's in instructional design, and have continued now working as a learning experience designer still in gaming and tech.
And I remember that was one of the first reasons that I reached out to you was I wanted to learn about working in a corporate learning and development instructional design role. What could I expect? What was the workplace like? What did you love about it? And so right now you're working as a senior learning experience designer. And I'm curious, what are some of the things that you love or look forward to the most in your day-to-day work?
I think the thing that I love the most about my work is being able to focus everything that I do on how to help people do their jobs better. It's really empowering to feel like my ultimate goal at work is to help somebody else. Just do their job better, be happier at work, have more fun at work. I love that aspect of it all.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I can see how it allows you to take some of the maybe creative energy that you have and not just be creative, but then take that creativity and turn it into something that really makes a visible and tangible difference in the lives of the people that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, every time you say that this meeting could have been an email, it's literally our job sometimes to turn something that would have been a very long meeting into a short communication.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is as we're creating learning tools, learning resources, experiences, something that oftentimes we hear is, let's gamify this. Let's make this fun or make it interesting. And you talked about how before getting into your current role, you had a lot of experience working in the gaming industry. And so I would be curious to understand for you, Garrett, and with your background, how would you define game-based learning?
Ooh, I think to start, I think the term gamification or gamify is somewhat problematic. I think a lot of times what we do is we take the mechanic of a game, something like points or leaderboards or whatever, and just slap it onto an otherwise traditional learning experience and call it gamified. I will tell you right now, I have seen attempts to do like, let's add points for people to, complete courses in our LMS, and nobody's doing more courses because there are points now, right? It doesn't actually change behavior. The reason why game-based and like games at all are a part of the education research space is because of the power that games have to engage their audience. That's what it's about. It's about engagement. And there are things that we can learn from games that we can apply to learning experience design. that will make our training more engaging, similar to games.
So I'm curious, from what you've seen over the years, what experiences have helped you shape your understanding of how to really effectively take gamification or game-based principles and meaningfully apply them to the learning experiences that you create?
Yeah, I think the first thing is understanding what drives people to play games. What are they actually here for, right? In some cases, it's going to be I want to dive into this deep story and I want to, just be immersed in the game. Or maybe it's the game looks really beautiful, the artwork is stunning and I want to walk around and explore this universe. In some cases, it's just having clarity of expectations. Here is a quest. Go here, solve this problem, right? Defeat these monsters, get this reward. That clarity is actually really empowering to people. I want to just know what's expected of me really clearly. And then I feel empowered to actually be able to accomplish that thing. So I think there are a lot of ways that we can kind of dissect a game and pull out some of these most critical pieces of a game to understand why do people play and how do we get our learners to play as well.
Yeah, I love that you talked about a couple of things. You talked about the story, you talked about making it beautiful, and then that clarity. And when you talked about story, it made me think about what is the story that we're telling our learners as far as they're the protagonist in this adventure. And I'm curious, have you had a specific experience where you saw story really make a difference for learners that you were working with or stakeholders?
Yeah, I'll use a couple of different examples because I've seen this in a lot of different ways. So, first is I worked at a VR company. So, we were doing basically VR experiences. So, you put on your headset, you get to sort of see and experience this world that's completely separate from your own. And we were training all of our employees who were going to guide our customers in using this VR experience, right? So this was like a location based one, not like an Oculus take it home situation. And one of the first things we said was, well, all of our employees should go through the experience. Point blank, period. It's so much easier to wrap your head around what it's going to feel like for one of our customers to immerse themselves in this full experience if we just take you through it. There's no substitute for that. You just need to experience it. And I think when we look at that from an LXD perspective, it's about creating authentic experience. I need to show you what the actual job is going to look like through a pure shadow. I need to show you through an actual simulated experience and not just from like a description of what it could look like at some point. Another example that I will use is a much more recent one, much more like corporate-y one at Square, which is just storytelling. When we talk about our different products or the way we price our products or how we use our products, we really should always start from the end in mind. Who is this for? What are they doing? How does this actually help them? Right? It's one thing to say, oh, this is going to speed up their process for accepting transactions with a credit card. Cool, bro. But what does that mean? Right? Like,
Yeah.
what does that feel like? But if I tell you about one of our sellers who is located in this city, in this state of the United States, and they are struggling to handle 200 customers in one line all during the lunch rush because it takes them 2 minutes per transaction, but we can chop that down to 30 seconds per transaction, and all of a sudden operations are moving and flowing.
Yeah.
That, like, you can watch that, you can see that, you can feel that, and that immersion, that story allows you as a learner to see this as actually important and not just like I get it with my head but I don't feel it.
Yeah. I think that's so cool that you talked about the story of the learner and then kind of with your work at Square, the story of the product. And when you were talking about that VR experience of there's no way to really describe VR to someone until you've experienced it. It reminded me of something that I experienced in my work at Vivint right now was going through the new hire experience, obviously you can talk about, well, what should be the curriculum? What's the experience like? But one of the best ways to really know is to go through the new hire training experience yourself. It's not just to talk with other people. And I remember in my first few weeks, they had me go through all of the e-learning content. And I got to the end and I got a little badge saying I was Smart Home Pro certified, ready to go install things in people's homes. And it was what you were saying, the journey, that story wasn't there. I didn't feel like, great, I'm going to go and install a smart thermostat in somebody's home and then drill into the exterior of their home to install our doorbell camera pro. I thought, I have not touched a single tool. I have a lot of these things that I got right on the quizzes because I'm pretty decent at taking an online test, and that's about it. And I don't actually feel certified like I grew in that journey. And so as we've been overhauling that onboarding experience, I think without realizing it on my end, at least, that story of you got to do shadows, you've got to spend more time with other people. We had to look at, okay, how can we make that structured and meaningful time with a trainer where somebody actually takes the time to sit there with you and say, let's practice this skill. Let's get hands-on experience doing this. And then I'll go ahead and say, you're certified in this skill or this ability. And that's such a different story than you went through the online modules and ta-da, here's your badge. You have to really connect those dots and tell that story and help learners see, I'm right here. I'm in this frustrated, incapable state where I don't have quite what I need or want. And through this journey of this learning experience, this learning program, we're going to get you to that hero's end, that journey of what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think there's actually been some kind of pushback to the idea of gamification because folks look at it and go, okay, but it's just storytelling, and that's the real magic, right? It's not gamification, it's storytelling. Yes, and right, it's that, and it's the beautiful artwork, and it's the way that we construct the journey through the training that gives you this kind of quest mentality, right? There is a task I need to learn how to do. There's a clear what's in it for me, and I'm given these clear instructions along the way to level myself up, right? Like the job is the game. It's not the learning is the game. The job is the game. And during the game, you're given tools to overcome obstacles. What do you think training is? Right? It's just us giving you tools to overcome obstacles in your job. And if we approach it from that same mentality, we start to understand, what is the main quest here? What are the side quests? What are all of the loot drops? Like what's the reward for getting this to happen, right? The reward in a game is something that applies to the game. So a reward at work needs to be something that applies to work. It can't just be some digital badge that nobody wants, right? It has to be something that I actually want, that I will fight for. And what is that? Is that a raise? Is that time off? Is that public recognition? Like, what is that? And if you don't understand what that is from your learner, then good luck, right? They're not going to care about the points that you're putting out there. They're not going to care about the badges you're creating, because the badge or the point or the whatever has to have intrinsic value to what they care about. You don't build the game because you care about the points. You build the game because you want your player to care about the points. And the same is true. So, in a lot of ways, I think we can look at games and look at learning as the same thing. It's the same kind of goal, at least from a design perspective. We're trying to understand our end user, whether that's a learner or a player. We're trying to build some kind of experience, some kind of journey that's going to include maybe some story elements, maybe some art elements, maybe some interactive elements. Maybe there's a lot of that, maybe there's not, right? And you could see games that have all sorts of varieties of all of these different things based on what their player wants, right? And so the same is true for us. You understand who your player is, you build the experience that's going to help them get there, and you provide for them the tools that they need in order to overcome the obstacles that come up in their job.
Yeah, I love the way you painted that picture of main quests, side quests, loot drops, incentives. that when people say gamification is just storytelling, yes, and you have to combine that storytelling with meaningful loot, with meaningful reward. It can't just be, and now you have this digital badge that you can share on your LinkedIn profile with your network. That might be motivating to some people, and there are definitely instances where that is helpful. Maybe you're trying to complete a LinkedIn learning course and you can see that as the game with the side quest and the badge at the end. But when it comes to, like you described, the game being your work that you show up to every single day, and the quests are the inputs that you're putting in every single day, we have to, as learning experience designers, think about what's the reward when somebody executes on that training. When they save 2 minutes on the customer transaction, we can't just give them a pat on the back. They need some other kind of reward, whether that be recognition, time off. And then when we start to make those connections, it's going to make our learning experiences so much more effective.
Yeah. And I would say, to anybody out there who's like, so what is game-based learning? What does that mean, right? Some people are going to come to you and say game-based learning is turning your course into a game, right? We're going to create video games, or every quiz is going to be Jeopardy, or every, whatever, right? From my perspective, there are things we can learn from the gaming industry and from game design that we can apply to learning experience design. It's not always going to be new concepts, right? We're not new to storytelling. We're not new to graphic design, but the way that those are applied inside of a game, whether a video game, a board game, card game, anything, we can learn from how those are applied inside of a game and apply that same mentality, that same design spirit into our learning experiences so that they get the same kind of engagement factor that a game would.
Yeah, and you talked about almost borrowing or maybe stealing elements from games that we love and saying, how can I take this element that I love, whether it be the storytelling, whether it be just the experience? And you talked about the visual appeal. Some games just look beautiful. Could you tell me more about how the visual appeal of a learning experience can benefit the same way that video games can, or just other gaming and gamified experiences do?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different ways that visuals really play in, and I'll use a couple of game examples if that's okay.
Absolutely.
For anybody who doesn't know these games, look them up. Enjoy them. I'll first start with something where the visual is like one of the main points of the game, right? This would be something like, what's a good example of a beautiful, beautiful game that everyone has played or knows about? Like a lot of people who play games like Elden Ring are really into the fact that like the world around them is like, it feels the way they want it to feel, right? There's this immersion that happens because they're looking at something that is as gritty as they want it to feel. It looks as dark as they want it to feel, right? And it would be really off-putting to dramatically change that art aesthetic and still treat the game exactly the same way, right? It's why that game looks the way that it does, but then you get a game like Fortnite that has a completely different artistic aesthetic, but it also has a completely different vibe. You're not going to Fortnite to play Elden Ring, right? Similarly, if we take a game that let's take a game that uses art like almost not at all as a kind of counter example, something like Minecraft. Minecraft is not known for its beautiful aesthetic. It is not known for the fantastic artwork, and yet it is one of, if not the highest selling game ever, right? Millions and millions of people playing this game, but it has no artwork in it. Really, like, at least it's not that good. It certainly wasn't when it first came out and became really popular, right?
Right.
Compared to all of these other games that spend millions on just the aesthetic and the art of their game. So you have to ask yourself, like, what role does it play? Well, in a game like Elden Ring, it's about that immersive, like, I just want to look around. I want to be able to just pan the camera around, and that's the experience I'm looking for. I don't even need to hit anything, although Obviously, you're going to play through the game, play more of the
Right.
game. But like, I don't have to in order to just be wowed. Just by the opening scene, I walk out of a building into this grand expanse of everything, and the artwork is just like breathtaking. Versus Minecraft, I'm not going in going like, wow, ooh, look at the iron, you know, look at the wood that's like so beautifully built. What's amazing about Minecraft is that they have focused their energies on the interactivity, the build, the programmable nature of Minecraft, right? All of these kind of like mechanical pieces that you can play with, that if they were to take the art way higher, right, and really try to build out that artwork, it might actually ruin it. There's something wonderful about an aesthetic that sort of doesn't take itself that seriously, because you can then take it not that seriously, right? And that's how people play Minecraft, right? I'm just gonna build a thing, try a thing, throw my sword around, you know. And what we should take away from that as learning experience designers is that the art needs to add to what we're trying to be and what we're trying to do. For a lot of corporate spaces where we're doing training, there isn't a whole lot of like a soul behind the training, right? There might be a brand for the company, but even that might not be that fun. It might just be kind of like, yeah, our brand is the color blue, you know, or whatever. And we have the opportunity to say, well, what if we take some of these things and we give them a bit of soul? So for example, at Square, one of the things that we do a lot is we try to represent our customers in actual human photos instead of in like simplistic drawings and things, because it gives that kind of richness of a real person that's on the other end. Maybe it's a fake business, maybe it's a fake customer that we're like putting the persona together, but it's a real picture of a real person, so that we can kind of get that grittiness, get that feel of this is a real authentic person in a real authentic business, not just the idea of somebody who could be out there.
Yeah. And I love that you talked about both ends of this spectrum of the visual aesthetic, all the way from super high end, beautiful, I just want to soak it in, all the way down to Minecraft of I don't really care what it looks like. It's the function, it's the interactivity that I love. And I think about how that applies just to, like you said, designing learning experiences, where sometimes we might be creating a slide deck or a resource, and if it doesn't have any personality and it just looks like a plain old Word doc, it's not going to get the attention it deserves, and people aren't going to use it. They're not going to look at it. But then other times too, like you said, sometimes going too hard, too crazy on let's make this look super cool and fun and fonts and colors, and I'm going to bring in a graphic designer. I'm going to use AI to generate a logo and a background, and maybe that actually takes away from the functionality and the usefulness of a resource. So I love that you pointed out that we can learn a lot from games, but we still have to think critically about how do we take these gamifying principles and really implement them into our work.
Yeah, I've definitely seen, at least from my personal experience, I think more LXDs feel like they need to make everything more beautiful than it actually needs to be. And I'm not suggesting that we like lower the bar for ourselves, but I am suggesting that it needs to be a purposeful art and not just art for art's sake. That already exists. I'm a fan of fine art and all the beautiful things, but that's not what training is about, right? The goal is not for people to open up our training and be like, wow, that picture is gorgeous. That's not the point. I want you to get to the information, and I want you to take in that information. So if that means I need to simplify the graphic, simplify the aesthetic so that it's really clear and really guides you to what actually matters, that's what I'm going to do. And the art can, go on the side. And if there's an opportunity to take the aesthetic and make it even more beautiful, make it even more interesting to look at without detracting from the experience of the game and the experience of learning, incredible, all for it. But I think more often than not, we look at it as a fine art aesthetic challenge. Can I make this pretty? The goal is not to make it pretty. The goal is to make it an experience. And a lot of games are built to be not pretty. That's the whole point. play any horror game, right? It's built to be not pretty, but it's built to give you an experience. And as long as it creates that experience, it's successful. So what we need to better understand is not just what is the purpose of art as, beauty, but what is the purpose of art as experience, as functional, right? To make me feel something, think something, do something. And that's the real challenge. The challenge isn't even that technical side of it. Like, how do I even make this thing? That's hard, but that's way easier than trying to figure out, like, do I even need art here? Is there something that's going to add to what I'm building in this course, or what I'm building in these slides, or what I'm doing in this group activity in person?
And you have years of experience. This wasn't something that you learned overnight, was how to take these gamifying principles, how to take beautiful artwork or how to take storytelling and apply it to your work. It's something that you've been spending a lot of time gaining skill at, practicing, crafting. And so if someone were listening right now and thinking, I love games, I love the idea of gamifying my learning, but this kind of sounds overwhelming. I don't want to be the LXD that just slaps a streak or slaps points on my course, but I would love to get started. What advice would you give to someone who wants to get started with gamifying their learning experiences and taking these principles and putting them into practice?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is think like a game designer. And that is going to sound very similar to think like a learning experience designer. Understand your audience. Who are they? What do they like? What's fun to them? Because it doesn't matter if it's fun to you. It matters if it's fun to them, right? What kind of tools and time and resource do you have? Like, is it actually feasible for me to create a Jeopardy game, or do I only have one afternoon to throw something together? Right? Do I have the tools and the software to build what I want to build? Or is this something that's going to be updated every month and I probably just have to like make it easier to maintain, right? Like, understand what's feasible and what's in budget. And then lastly is like, understand what even the mechanics of a game are. Like, if you don't play games, you need to play games. It doesn't mean you have to play video games or a certain genre of game, but just play something. Play a card game, play tag, right? Like, it could be anything, but whatever games you play, start pulling them apart and say, what is the experience that is being created through this game? And what are the mechanics that are being used to drive that experience? Am I getting the experience through the visuals, or is it more through the really incredible audio dialogue? Is it because of the specific like fighting mechanics or the whatever, right? Like, whatever piece of it that really resonates with you, understand what that is. Look at forums and other things that other people do to talk about the games that they play. Ask your friends, ask your coworkers, ask everybody what games they play and why they play those games. And you'll start to see that a lot of people do it because it builds connection. I get to play with my friends, with my family. It creates some kind of like immersive escapism, right? I get to go away from the world for a second and enter the world of Pokemon or enter the world of Minecraft and be somewhere else, doing something else. It might just feel like achievement. Sometimes it feels like work is just an endless slog because you have all of this work that never ends and it's hard to identify the clear milestones that you hit. But in a game, I know exactly when I finished the quest because a big thing shows up on the screen and I get like a little sound effect and I get confetti falling from the sky, right? Like, I know that I've achieved something and that makes me feel really good. And maybe if we were able to take some of these tiny pieces of how a game designer builds games to make people feel great as they're playing games and want to play more, we could build that into our workspace so that not only are you able to play the game better, right? Like, do your job more effectively, but you also get to have fun doing it. Who doesn't want that?
My
Have
hands
fun,
up.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the plug to go play more games. And you even pointed out it doesn't have to be video games. It can be card games, board games, but immerse yourself in games. And I think that's a really helpful starting point. Get hands-on with games, pay attention to what you love about them, what other people love about them, and then also kind of bring it back to earth too. Consider your audience. Who is this for? Maybe people don't have the time or the care or the energy for a certain type of gaming element in the workplace. And then the other point you made is those constraints. Do we have the time, the resources, the budget to really implement this? Can we do a virtual reality training? Maybe not, maybe you can. So we've got to think about those constraints. But when we put that all together, that's a super, super helpful starting point to say, I'm going to try and take elements I love about games and make the game of work for my learners something that they can enjoy. Love that. And then lastly, I would be curious to hear, you mentioned some potential resources that you would recommend. If somebody was wanting to dive even deeper, they're listening and thinking, man, I could listen to Garrett talk about this all day. Where would you recommend that people go to learn more about gamification and game-based learning?
Yeah, first thing I would do is pick up a copy of The Art of Game Design. Great book. It's by Jesse Schell. This is like, for a lot of folks, is like the Bible of game design. It is like the book. It talks a lot about the different elements of game design, like who is the player, what is the game. It's very philosophical in that way, but it also brings it right back down to earth in showing examples of games that do these different things really well, and then breaks apart the game into a lot of really small pieces, which is really helpful to identify, like, okay, so there's a mechanic, and the mechanic might be, time-based, or the mechanic might be input-based and interactive, or it might not be, right? Like, okay, and now I can sort of dissect what this game is really doing, so that when I try to apply something to a learning experience, I can say, yeah, I know why it works in this game. So I'm just going to apply the principle to the learning experience instead of just applying the mechanic directly in.
Yeah, I love that. I'll be sure to put the link in the show notes for that book. And then I'll have to put in the links for the games that you mentioned too, for some inspiration if people are wanting to check out what are the games that Garrett's talking about. They can definitely do a deep dive. And if people wanted to connect with you, they wanted to learn more about you, your experience, and just keep up with the work that you're doing, what's the best place for people to connect with you, Garrett?
Best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can find me at Garrett Egan. I'll probably be doing some different events and things throughout the year. I don't know if I'll talk about games or if I'll talk about other things in learning experience design, but whatever I'm up to, if you want to follow along, that's sort of
amazing. Well, I'll be sure to put your LinkedIn your LinkedIn profile in the description as well, so that people can check that out. And just a huge thank you so much, Garrett, for your time today and for such an insightful deep dive into gamification and game-based learning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
A huge thank you to Garrett for such a thoughtful conversation and for helping us rethink how games, storytelling, and design intersect with our work in learning and development. Whether you're building a new onboarding experience or reworking a compliance training, I hope this episode gave you fresh ideas on how to make the work feel a little more like play and a lot more effective. If you want to keep up with Garrett's work or connect with him, be sure to check out the link to his LinkedIn in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.